Hello. It's time for Steins Gate Zero. I know Steins Gate. It was so scary. And so good. How do you follow up the best visual novel ever? Steins Gate Zero did it. Let's see. Begin. I know Steins Gate. I read it 8 years ago. A long time ago. Oh, it's been a long time since I've seen these characters. The hatch opened. Bright light flooded my eyes. Where was I? My eyes narrowed. I could barely make out the summer's twilight sky. I didn't want to leave. I just wanted to disappear. But someone grabbed my arm and dragged me out. I didn't have the energy to respond to my own nickname. I fell to the ground and wrapped my arms around myself. Mayuri ran to me and looked down, her face worried, but her kindness felt like nothing but a nuisance. Don't talk to me. Just leave me alone. Dara ran to the door that led back inside the building. Stop it. Just get away from me. Leave me alone. I couldn't save her. In fact, I killed her myself. Or a year, 3 weeks ago. I killed her. I'm a murderer.
何をやっても無駄だ。全部決まってしまっていることなんだよ。同じだ。真由里の時と同じなんだ。どれだけもがいたって結果は同じになる。
No matter how many times I try, it will all converge back to the same result. The process doesn't matter. Whether you time travel or time leap, you can't go back and change the results of the past. I thought I understood that cruel truth, but now I was forced to realize it again, and in the worst possible way.
無駄だよ。無駄なんだ。何もかも無駄なんだよ。俺はやっぱりクリスを助けられないんだ。分かってた。分かってたんだ。こうなるって予想してたんだ。もう疲れた。ずっと休んでないんだ。だからもういいよ。
おかりん、一体何が。
俺が殺した。殺してしまった。バカみたいだ。全部俺のせいだ。
マキセ・クリスをさ、刺し殺しちゃったんだ。殺した？嘘、そんな。でも安心して、まだもう一回分タイムトラベルはできる。
ほっといてくれ。俺のことなんか何度やったって結果は同じだ。
何言ってんの？諦めるつもり？オカリンおじさんの肩には何十億っていう人の命がかかってるんだよ。たった一回の失敗が何だって言うんだ。
クリスはどうやったって助けられない。世界線の収束には逆らえない。
That's the reality of this world. I learned that a long time ago.
こうなったらビンタしてでも気合い入れ直して。ダメだよ。無理強いするのは良くないよ。こんなボロボロになってるオカリン見てられないもん。でもさ、このままじゃ未来を変えられない。どうして未来のことをオカリン一人に押し付けるの？そんなの重すぎるよ。オカリンおじさんは世界の感
You know what was too much to bear, Mayuri? You dying a bunch.
望んだわけじゃないのに。それにもう一度やったってまたオカリンが傷つくだけだって思うな。未来のことを人一人で変えようなんてきっと無理なんだよ。だからそのためのシュタインズゲートで、気持ちはわかるよ。でもさ、私も未来をかけてここまで来てるんだよね。どっちにしろ2036年には戻れないんだ。そう簡単に諦めるつもりはないから。オカリンおじさん、一つだけ忠告しとく。このタイムマシンに残されてる燃料は有限なの。さっきは往復2回分しか残ってないって言ったけど、実はまだそれなりに余裕はある。それでも移動できる時間はおよそ344日分。片道のタイムトラベルだとしても、今から1年と経たないうちに7月28日には届かなくなる。覚えといて。その日になったらさ、 私はたとえ一人でも飛ぶよ。
Someone was saying something to me, but I couldn't understand the words. I didn't want to listen to anything. I just wanted to sleep. Just let this all end. Just let me go.
おかりおかりねえおかりもう頑張らなくてもいいからね。泣いてもいいんだよ。おかりまゆしーはそばにいるからね。おかり
I don't know if Mayuri's words were the reason why, but the tears started to flow. I decided to forget everything. Ever since that day, I stopped going to the Future Gadget Lab. UPX, the new symbol of Akihabara, was located right in front of the station. In the hall on the 4th floor, preparations had been going on all morning for the ATF Akihabara Techno Forum convention. Universities and labs from both inside and outside the country would work together to put on special seminars and symposiums at irregular intervals. The auto is a little fast. My school, Tokyo Denki University, was participating as part of its industry collaboration efforts. Students were required to attend these seminars and submit reports to their instructors. Otherwise, they wouldn't get credit for their related classes. In addition, I was supposed to help one of the lecturers, Associate Professor Izaki. I had just gotten a list from the reception desk at the shared lobby. I was waiting to check off the names of students who were coming up to the lectures. There was still some time before the seminar started, so the lobby was mostly empty. None of the students on the list were here yet. I was bored, but I couldn't do anything but wait. The old me never could have imagined doing anything like this, but impressing Izaki was part of my new goal in life. Victor Chondria University. Yes, that was my new goal. Izaki did a lot of joint research projects with them and knew a lot of people there. The best first step to getting there my brain could come up with was being his assistant. Also, this convention was holding another seminar by Victor Chondria University after the one held this summer. Of course, that interested me too. Summer. An image of her as she was then flashed in my mind. I was trying to get to Victor Chondria so that I could learn about the work that Kurisu Makise had been doing. I wanted to try to do it myself. Of course, I wasn't a genius like Kurisu. I knew there was no way I'd ever be able to do exactly what she did. But if I could do even 10% of it, honestly, I'm amazed that I recovered so well. I thought that to myself and chuckled, just as a voice called to me from across the lobby. I looked up and saw a young girl approaching from the elevator hall. She was short and petite. Everything about her was small. I could kind of make out a few of the curves that don't appear until after puberty, so at least she wasn't in elementary school. But maybe middle school? For someone with such a cute face, she clearly didn't care about her appearance. Her hair wasn't styled, and it flowed down her back. Even I could tell her clothes weren't very fashionable.
ごめんなさい。スタッフルームってどこかしら？
ここは ATF のセミナー会場だけど。
Clearly not a place where a middle school girl belongs. She'd probably just come to the wrong place.
そんなの分かっているわ。何度同じ話を繰り返せば気が済むの？
いや、今初めて行ったんだけど。
私にとってはあなたで4回目よ。この場所に来てからね。
Irritated, she pulled a card out of her jacket. It was one of the IDs given out to invited guests. Her name and the name of her workplace were written on the front. Victor Chondria University, USA, Brain Science Institute. I looked at the card and then at her, then back at the card, then I looked at her again. I finally realized. Oh.
そういうことか。そのカード、どこに落ちてたんだ？拾ってくれたん。
その話も4回目よ。
She sighed and showed me another card. This one was a photo ID from Victor Chondria University.
Eh?
It was the same ID I'd seen Kurisu holding before on another world line. The photo on the card, yeah, that was definitely her.
Hiyajo Maho って読むの。私の名前。Hiyajo Maho。漢字でもローマ字でも誰も読めた試しがないから、先に言っとくわ。
ビクトル・コンドリア大学の中学生？
寝ぼけるなら夜にして。大学に中学生がいるわけないでしょ。
それもそうだな。じゃあ飛び級か。
Unlike in Japan, it wasn't uncommon for Americans to skip grades. Kurisu had made it to university at age 17. But still, a girl this young working in a university lab.
一つ確認していいかしら。あなた今、少なからず衝撃を受けてるわよね。こんな小さい子が信じられないかしら。それともこの年齢ですごいの方。
She got me.
ここをよく見なさい。
The girl Maho Hiyajo pointed to part of the ID with her slender fingers. She was born in 1989, and it was 2010, so...
21歳。
つまり立派な成人女性よ。中学生じゃないの。もちろん小学生でも幼稚園児でも。
And then she puffed out her chest. There wasn't much to see, but I could imagine her saying, "They look bigger when I'm not wearing clothes. They're huge."
何かしらその顔は。
いや、悪かった。謝る。
I couldn't believe it. She was older than me. If Daru was here, he'd be dancing around screaming, "Legal Lolly for the win!"
まあいいわ。世界中どこへ行っても同じ目に遭ってるから。
そうだな。
何か言った？
いや、別に。
Still, the Brain Science Institute? That's where Kurisu worked. Which means this kid, no, this person, might know a lot about Kurisu. I held back the impulse to start badgering her with questions. I looked at the pamphlet with the seminar schedules. Victor Chondria's lecture was the last one for the day, and was clearly intended to be the biggest. Was this Maho Hiyajo girl going to give a lecture? Just like Kurisu had done at the summer convention. No, wait, that's wrong. That never happened. Kurisu Makise never gave any lectures over the summer. That happened in the Alpha World Line. In the world line I inhabited now, before the summer convention, she'd already...
君が今日登壇を？
いいえ、私は助手として来たの。あと通訳も。
Man, Okabe, I don't know how you put up with Steins gate. It was so scary. I looked at the pamphlet again and saw that their lecturer was a man named Alexis Leskinen, a professor at Victor Chondria University and the chief researcher of the Brain Science Institute.
人工知能革命か。面白そうだ。
時間があったらぜひ聞いてみてほしいわね。
そうするよ。あ、スタッフルームだったよな。
I lead Maho over to the elevator hall and showed her where the staff room was.
ありがとう。
I had no reason to hang around her any further. I said goodbye and was just about to turn around. Just then, the elevator opened, a woman emerged. The instant I saw her face, every hair on my body stood on end. Moika, Kiryu. It was all I could do to keep myself from screaming. Calm down. This is the Beta World Line. Mayuri is alive. Moika's not going to kill her. Our eyes met. The eyes on the other side of her glasses were as dead as ever, and it was impossible to tell what she was thinking. I frantically averted my gaze before she realized something was wrong. She tilted her head for a second, but quickly lost interest in me and turned toward Maho.
ああ、雑誌社の方でしたよね。お約束通り取材を。
Even in this world line, Moika still only spoke in faint whispers.
レスキネン教授はまだなんです。少しお待たせしてしまいますけど。はい。それまで私でよければシステムの概要でもお願いします。
The two of them disappeared into the staff room. As I watched them leave, I took a deep breath. I tried to calm down, but it wasn't working.
桐生萌か。 もしかしてまたお前なのか。
It was a terrible feeling, like a cold finger tracing the wounds in my heart. That night, when the terrorist threat shut down all the trains in Akihabara, that awful night when I just knew something was going to happen.
ここでもまたお前が。
Or was I just imagining things? Was she just a magazine reporter now instead of a CERN rounder? No, even if Malika was a rounder, we had nothing to do with CERN anymore. CERN wouldn't be watching us. I took another deep breath, grabbed some of the anxiety meds in my pocket, and swallowed them down with some mineral water I bought ahead of time. It would take 15 minutes for them to kick in. Those 15 minutes were always pretty rough. I laughed at myself a little and sat down on one of the reception desk chairs. Quick save, yay. The table was filled with leaflets, pamphlets, and other things for the attendees. Quick save. My eyes wandered to one of the pamphlets. Nakabachi theory and the genealogy of pseudoscience. Did it turn the auto off too? Oh. The pamphlet was for Professor Izaki's seminar, Nakabachi Theory, the paper he'd announced in Russia. That paper held the key to creating a real-time machine. On that day, July 28th, Nakabachi had stolen the paper from Kurisu, his own daughter, and left with it. I knew that. Only Nakabachi and I knew that. I flipped through the pamphlet. It was a brief introduction to the many forms of pseudoscience and fake scientific discoveries that had emerged since the start of the 20th century. On its own, it did make for interesting reading. And at the end of the pamphlet, Nakabachi theory was introduced as nothing more than another entry in that long list of fakes. So Dr. Nakabachi's time machine theory had been completely ignored by the academic world. All the glory, fame, and power he'd wanted so badly that he was willing to get rid of his own daughter, he didn't get any of it. And I'd heard rumors that after the announcement, he'd been imprisoned in a Russian lab. To make it even funnier, he thought he was getting VIP treatment. For a short time, there were essays and interviews in bogus academic journals. Even there, it was obvious it had all gone to his head. The ironic thing was that Nakabachi theory was completely correct and completely revolutionary. The Russian government was worried about it leaking, and the SVR was doing everything it could to keep it under wraps. But under the surface, there was a full-scale information war beginning over the paper. The time traveler from 2036, John Titor, had told me so, which meant it had to be true. Was World War III really going to happen? There was no point in thinking about it. Just a little more before the drugs kicked in. I closed my eyes. Several hours later, so when I go over this, it lights up to, okay, interesting, and the auto did stop again as well. Oh, ooh, nice. Call, oh, setting. Oh, yay. Okay, I might do that in a little bit. Wait, can I have the phone up and and read at the same time? No, the convention was going well. After Professor Izaki's seminar, most of the students from my university went home, but I killed some time and came back. I wanted to hear the Victor Chondria lecture. I headed to the hall with plenty of time to spare and saw Maho Hiyajo coming from the staff room. She was with a very tall foreigner. Was that Alexis Leskinen? It did seem like an American name, but maybe he was an immigrant like Kurisu, or at least descended from one. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the looks on their faces were so serious that I couldn't help but listen. Since they were both speaking in English, I could barely make out any of it, but I could tell from their voices that it wasn't a pleasant chat. Wait, did I just hear the word Makise? I hated the fact that I couldn't speak English. If I'd known this was going to happen, I would have gone to an English school. The two of them walked into the waiting room for lectures. It was located right next to the UPX theater. I put together the few fragments I was able to understand. Fire at Kurisu's house. Mrs. Makise is alright. Robbery. The police called off the investigation. Why was the FBI there? It doesn't make sense. I think that's what they were saying. Kurisu's house? Do they mean where she lived in America? Her mother should still live in America. Is that where the fire was? And then words like robbery and the investigation was called off. I really wanted to know more. I stood there and worried until it was time for the lecture to begin. With nothing else to do, I went inside the theater. I could tell earlier by looking at the size of the crowds going inside, but it was a very high energy crowd. The atmosphere was clearly different than Izaki's seminar, which was mostly students there for credit. The place was nearly full with a crowd of scientists and people who wanted to learn about cutting-edge technology. Victor Chondria's researchers has published a slate of papers in Science recently, and had gotten a lot of media attention. Maybe that was why. Were there any empty seats? I found a single open seat at the edge. I found a single empty seat at the edge. But when I looked at who was sitting next to it, I moaned. You again. Malika Kuryu was there. She was speaking to no one, just typing endlessly into her phone. I had once named her Shining Finger because of her incredible typing speed, and she was as fast as ever. Who was she talking to? I didn't even want to imagine. I quickly turned away and looked for another seat. Dr. Leskinen reached the podium almost the exact instant I sat down. There was a huge wave of applause, but when they saw the tiny little girl come up next to him, that applause faded into confused murmurs. Maho must have expected this. Her expression didn't change in the slightest as she stood next to the professor. In fact, when she took the microphone from the professor and looked around the theater, she looked like she belonged there.
Ladies and gentlemen.
First, Dr. Leskinen began to speak in English. When he made eye contact with Maho, she began to interpret.
皆さん、本日は私のセミナーに集まってくださって感謝します。ビクトル・コンドリア大学脳科学研究所のアレクシス・レスキネンです。専門は脳信号処理システムおよび人工知能理論になります。そして私は助手のヒヤジョマホです。同じく脳科学研究所で教授の指導に沿って研究をしています。よろしく。
The audience started murmuring again. That was the same way I responded when I met her. Well, that'll happen, yeah.
では早速ですが、私たちの最先端研究の一端をご紹介します。テーマは人工知能革命としましたが、これからデモンストレーションするシステムはおそらく皆さんの想像を超えたものではないかと思っています。
Dr. Leskinen stood in front of the laptop that had been placed on the podium and started to type.
このパソコンですが、研究所のスーパーコンピューターの一つと接続されています。ああ、まだプロジェクターには映さないで。
One of the staffers was about to display the laptop screen on the front projector. Some kind of important program must have been booting up because Maho Hiyajo stopped them.
すみません、まだ開発途中なんです。非常に微適センスのないプログラムが画面いっぱいにあふれ返っています。こんなチープなプログラムを見られるのは恥ずかしい。裸を見られるよりもね。この中にエンジニアの方がいるなら理解していただけますよね。
Some of the audience got the professor's joke and laughed.
起動するまでの間、このシステム全体の概略を説明しましょう。
There was another projector in the center of the stage. A diagram appeared on its screen. And at the top of the diagram was a Japanese translation for the general audience. An analysis of neural pulse signals relating to memories stored in the temporal lobe. I knew that title well. In fact, I was sure I could never forget it. It was the title of an essay written by a 17-year-old genius and published in Science. She had completely analyzed the nerve impulse patterns that govern human memory and used that to digitize the memories themselves into data. And she had used that to invent the time leap machine right in front of my eyes. Though none of that had actually happened anymore.
サイエンス誌に掲載されたのでご存知の方もいるでしょう。これは私たちのチームにいた天才的な日本人研究者によって提唱され完成されたものです。人間の記憶は大脳皮質、とりわけ 側頭葉に記録されます。いわゆるフラッシュメモリみたいなもの。そのメモリに記憶を書き込んだり読み出したりするのが側頭葉にある海馬傍回という部位になります。
Dr. Leskinen pointed to the diagrams of the brain and hippocampus on the screen.
脳はニューロンと呼ばれる細胞の間を電気信号が伝わっていくことで働いています。記憶というのも実はこういった電気信号の伝わりの一つなのです。その働きを制御しているのが海馬傍回と言ってもいいでしょう。つまり電気信号が海馬傍回を出入りすることで記憶は作られていくんですね。そこでマキセ・クリスはこの論文を書いた日本人研究者です。マキセ研究員は考えました。海馬傍回を通る電気信号が電気信号のパターンと大脳皮質の
Maho started to have trouble with her interpreting. She was getting confused. No matter how good you were with languages, interpreting for a long period of time had to be difficult. I'd once read an article on the internet that said even a professional can't do it for more than 20 minutes. International conferences and live broadcasts from overseas were actually handled by a team of people switching off. You're doing so good so far though. Or maybe, was she having trouble because Kurisu's name came up? Dr. Leskinen said she saw she was having trouble and cut himself off.
マキセ研究員は海馬傍回を出入りする電気信号のパターンに着目しました。そのパターンが大脳皮質のどの記憶と対応しているのか解析を行って完全なデータを得たのです。これによって記憶という曖昧でアナログなものを電気信号のパターンの組み合わせというデジタルなものに変換する基礎理論が確立されたのです。これがサイエンス誌に掲載された彼女の論文です。そして現在私たちのチームはその理論をもとに人間の記憶をデジタルデータとして取得するシステムを開発しています。
A wave of whispers swept across the theater.
それはすなわち人間の記憶をコンピューターに保存しそれを活用するシステムということになります。
The whispers turned into a low roar. I see. So even after her death, Kurisu's research was being carried on. Of course, maybe it was natural that it would be. That was the basic theory for time leaping, which I had proved myself, even if I could never prove it to anyone else in the Alpha World line. My memories had been turned into data and stored on a computer. There was no doubt about that. And what Dr. Leskinen was talking about right now was the basic technology required for that process.
現在、私たちが行っているプロジェクトは主に2つです。1つは医療分野への応用です。
The slide on the projector changed.
こちらは精神生理学研究所と共同で行っているプロジェクトです。コンピューターに保存した記憶データを海馬傍回を通して再び元の脳に書き戻すというもので
Incredible!
Someone who looked like a grad student in the front row shouted. Dr. Leskinen didn't seem particularly put off by the interruption. Maho continued her interpretation.
信じがたいですかその気持ちは理解できます。私も皆さんの立場であればそう言ったでしょう。しかしこの研究に私たちは手応えを感じています。これが実用化できればどんなに素晴らしいことでしょう。例えば老化による記憶障害、あとはアルツハイマーなどそうしたものへの対処療法が期待できます。患者の記憶をデータとして自動的にバックアップしていくのです。記憶が失われたとしてもその都度 PC にアクセスし脳内にデータを再インストールすることが可能です。それによって暴虐の進行を食い止められるのではないか。私たちはそう考えています。 最終的には海馬傍回から PC 内の記憶データに常時アクセスできるようになるでしょう。そうすれば脳機能が失われた状態、例えば脳が激しく損傷したり萎縮してしまった場合などですが、そのような状態でも変わらず脳機能を維持できます。あたかも外部ストレージと同じように。
A strange feeling gripped the hall. Part of it was shock and the feeling that they were witnessing the announcement of an incredible technology. Part of it was skepticism that a system like this could ever actually work. Part of it was revulsion at the idea of playing around with a human brain like that. An excitement born of all these things passed from one member of the crowd to another. Dr. Leskinen raised his hand to encourage questions.
どうやら2つ目のプロジェクトをお話しする前に質問を受け付けないといけないようですね。できる範囲でお答えします。どうぞ。
Many hands were raised. I could tell that there was a wide range of people interested. Both young and old were raising their hands. Dr. Leskinen pointed to a questioner. This was the first question. Sampling would be required when digitizing analog memories. Does that mean any information will be lost? The professor nodded as he listened to the question in Japanese and began to respond in English when the speaker finished. Maybe he was able to understand Japanese, if not speak it.
その質問を言い換えると、オーケストラの生演奏を WAV のデータに保存する際、生演奏のすべてを完璧に記録することはできないと。確かにその懸念はあります。現在の研究で最も困難な問題の一つです。脳内のネットワークが神経伝達物質のオンオフだけで、つまり二進数的にデータのやり取りをしているのであれば簡単な問題でした。それはデジタルデータと同じことだからです。しかし実際には伝達物質や電気信号は脳内でアナログ的に変化することが分かっています。この問題に関しては今のところより高いサンプリングレートでデータをサンプルする方法しか手段を持っていません。音楽の話で言えば 44.1kHz よりも 48kHz、 48kHz よりも 96kHz でサンプリングするといった具合です。それによってデジタルでありながらアナログデータに近い情報を得ようとしています。
Little by little, the mood in the room was turning to disappointment. People were beginning to wonder if this was just a pretty theory that wouldn't work in reality. More questions came. All of the questioners were skeptical of the professor's theory, and many of them seemed to be outright challenging him. I started to get upset. This was Dr. Leskinen's research, but it was also Kurisu's. I knew better than anyone that it worked, and the sight of so many people refusing to give it a chance infuriated me. Were these people really scientists? I tried to keep myself under control and looked back towards the podium. Was she mad? She certainly looked disappointed. Dr. Leskinen was very polite with the rude questioners, but acknowledging the problems with the theory, she was very different. Her anger was starting to seep into her interpreting, too. I felt a kind of kinship with her. The question and answer session continued. This is what all these people presenting new ideas go through. You really have a lot of stuff to think about when you make something new. That was the one thing I couldn't ignore. The two people on the stage and the entire audience all turned toward me at once.
やってみもしないで何がわかるって言うんだ。最初は無理だと思われてた技術なんてこの世にいくらでもあるじゃないか。でもそれを克服した研究者がいたからこそ今があるんだろう。ただ批判するだけじゃ何も生まれない。
The whole theater went silent, but I didn't regret standing up.
あなた
On the stage, Maho Hiyajo was staring at me in shock, and as for Dr. Leskinen, I saw a flash of white teeth as our eyes met. Oh, he started to applaud. Oh, why was he applauding? That just makes things embarrassing.
素晴らしい彼はなかなか
There
大した
are
やつ
so
だ
many possible ideas in science, too. Some work, some don't. Maho translated the professor's
ただ
words.
し科学者たるもの常に冷静でなければいけない大声で怒鳴っていいのは実験が成功した時の We did it それだけで十分だそうですよ
すみません
I lowered my head and sat down. I thought I was calm, but I guess I let my emotions get away from me. I hadn't grown up at all in the past 6 months. If Kurisu was here, she'd make fun of me again. I could feel the rest of the audience staring at me coldly. It hurt. If I could have left, I would have wanted to, but I was too interested in hearing the rest of Dr. Leskinen's talk to move.
それでは皆さんそろそろ次にでもその前に勇敢な彼に拍手をお願いします
Oh no, please no.
彼のような挑戦者こそが科学を進歩させあっと驚くような理論を作り上げるのです彼ならきっと第3のアインシュタインになれるかもしれませんねちなみに第2のアインシュタインはここにいるちょっと小うるさい私の助手変なこと言うのはやめてください教授
The audience chuckled. Sheesh.
さてここで私はしばらく通訳をお休みさせていただきますこれから私よりも優秀な通訳が登場しますこれが私たちのチームが
Man, I'm just so grateful for the sacrifices people make for science. Because it really is dangerous. When she finished speaking, Maho walked to the back of the stage. At Dr. Leskinen's signal, the PC screen was displayed on the projector. And then I heard a
皆
voice.
さん初めてお目にかかります
The murmuring got louder than before, but it felt more uncertain than surprised. On the screen, I could see a detailed 3D model of Maho, the girl who'd just been interpreting.
ちなみにこれは映画などで有名なドリンクワークススタジオに作成してもらったモデルです
Maho Hiyajo chimed in from the back of the stage.
声については私のボイスサンプルをデータベースにして日本の山名が作ってくれました
This was CG. It sure looked real to me. The professor said something into the laptop's microphone. And then the 3D model of Maho Hiyajo on the screen opened its mouth.
私はヒヤジョ真帆です正確に言うなら78時間22分前のヒヤジョ真帆から派生した存在ということになります
If you listen carefully, you might be able to hear something slightly off. But it sounded far more human than any artificial voice I'd ever heard.
先ほどから皆さんの質問を聞かせていただいていました教授はどうして私を早く紹介しないのかととてももどかしく思っていましたよ以前から感じていましたがどうも教授は人が悪いようですねまったくだわ
The Maho Hiyajo on the screen spoke with a slightly irritated expression. And the Maho Hiyajo by the wall nodded in agreement. Dr. Leskinen simply smiled. What was going on here? What part of this was their biggest project? The rest of the audience didn't seem to have any more of a clue than I did.
皆さんの多くは疑問に思っています人間の記憶をデータとして取り出したりそれを保存したりさらにはそのデータを活用したりそんなことが本当に可能なのかとそれでは私は一体何でしょうか私は78時間23分前のヒヤジョ真帆の脳内から取り出された記憶を持ちそのデータをベースにして動いているのです
What did she just say? The professor said something else in rapid English and asked the Maho on the screen to translate it. But she, if she was the right word, hesitated and went silent. I looked at the real Maho and she was responding exactly the same way.
教授今のは教授今の発言はセクシャルハラスメントとして大学に訴えてもいいでしょうか
Dr. Leskinen laughed cheerfully and responded to her. The conversation was in quick English, and over half the audience couldn't understand it. The real Maho sighed and took back the microphone.
教授はですね、私に対して、いえ、私の記憶で動作しているこのアマデウスに対して質問に答えてごらんと言いました。いつ頃までパパとお風呂に入っていたかとか、初恋はいつだったかとか、何でも答えられるだろうと。ああ、もうそれ以上通訳しなくていいわ。恥ずかしいからやめてくれないかしら。私はそういう質問には一切答えないわよ。
The professor said something else, and the Maho on the screen groaned and turned away.
クレジットカードの番号なんてもっと言えません。あと、1週間前に着ていたパジャマの色なんて覚えてるわけないです。
What was this? It was so natural I couldn't tell at first, but this was something unbelievable, wasn't it? It felt very different than a typical AI, I could tell that much. It wasn't answering the questions it was given. And because they were embarrassing? Was it programmed to respond like that to certain questions for the purposes of this demonstration? It was possible that's all it was, but if that conversation wasn't programmed in advance, the rest of the crowd seemed to reach the same conclusion I did, and the whispers started to turn into surprised murmur. So they make all this technology in these novels. I wonder if they've tried to make it in real life too. The copy of Maho was complaining to the original. It felt like I was watching a pair of twin sisters talking.
いたずらな子供ではなく、レスキネン教授が面白がってなかなか説明してくれないので、代わりに私がお話しします。
Maho walked back to the professor.
皆さん、もうお分かりかと思いますが、アマデウスは自分が話していいこととそうでないこと、あるいは話したいことと話したくないことを自ら判断して喋っています。私たちはアマデウスにそういったプログラムを一切施していません。
I knew it.
彼女は与えられた私の記憶からそれを独自に判断し、自律的にそういう行動をとっているのです。
The Maho on screen suddenly took over for it.
そしてこれは先ほどの医療分野への応用とは方向性が真逆になってしまい、研究所内でずっと議論が交わされていることですが、私は不必要な情報をいつの間にか忘れてしまうというか、記憶の引き出しから出してこられなくなるのです。皆さんと同じようにです。例えば1週間前に着ていたパジャマの色、確かにそれを知っていたはずなのに今は思い出せません。そのような情報は生存していく上で必要がないからです。これも皆さんと同じです。このようにアマデウスは記憶のインプットやアウトプットが人間のそれと非常に近いのです。これは私たちも驚くべき結果として研究を重ねている最中で、まだ詳しくは解明されていません。
As Maho finished up, Dr. Leskinen took the microphone back. She resumed interpreting as he continued the lecture.
さらに私たちを驚かせたのは、アマデウスが意図して嘘をつくということ。何らかのトラブルやミスではなく、わざとそうするのです。嘘は人間が他人とコミュニケーションを取る上での一つの手法です。アマデウスもインプットされた記憶を自律的に検討し、必要であれば自分や他人のために平気で嘘をつきます。教授、誤解を招くような言い方はやめてください。嘘をつくのに平気なことなんてありません。私だって両親が咎めます。
Dr. Leskinen cut off. He seemed to be hesitating. Maho didn't seem especially surprised by this. Maybe she knew the reason. But the moment passed and the professor continued. And Maho translated his words like there was nothing shocking about them at all.
このような検証を続けていくことで、最終的に私たちは アマデウスに人間と同様の魂を宿すことができるのではないかと考えています。
I was stunned. A soul? Should one of the leading brain scientists in the world really be using a word with such a vague definition?
これこそ本当の意味での人工知能ということになります。
The whole hall got very quiet, and it was sheer chaos for a while after that, as everyone tried to debate their own personal theories with Dr. Leskinen at once. Oh. It was thanks to Zaki that I was able to get into the reception held after the ATF was over. They told me there was a dress code, so I went all the way back to my parents' house to get a suit to change into. At first, all that effort paid off, as Zaki introduced me to some of the country's top researchers. But before long, Zaki ran off to suck up to some university professor, and I was left completely abandoned. My own personal target, Dr. Leskinen, was surrounded by a bunch of famous scientists. It didn't feel like a mere student would be welcome. And so all I did was stand around and eat from the buffet by the wall. To be honest, I couldn't tell if the food was any good or not. Whenever my glass got empty, a smiling waiter was always around to fill it up again, and so I found myself drinking more than I intended. My stomach was already so full it hurt. The whole place felt like it was another world. At the exact moment I spoke, I heard a girl next to me say the exact same thing. Surprised, I looked over at her. Our eyes met. What was a middle school girl doing here? And then a moment later, I realized it was Maho. She was wearing the exact same outfit she'd been wearing during the lecture. A lab coat in a place like this, that's just what the old me would have done. Maho was clearly out of place. Why? Because she was still wearing a lab coat. I couldn't help but ask. She was sure she had, but she hadn't. And that's why she was standing in the corner, trying not to attract attention.
昼間受付にいた人ね。
岡部倫太郎です。東京電機大学の学生で伊崎ゼミで勉強してます。
There. Okay, Steins Gate Zero, Part 1. Let's do this. Finally reading sequel to Steins Gate. I'm ready. Bye.